Hi there, my name is Kevin McInnes, and I am a friend of the Electoral District Association for John Barlow here in the Foothills. Our podcast is called Focus on the Foothills, and we interview John Barlow on a regular basis to find out what's going on for him, and particularly in our Foothills EDA. So thank you, John, for joining us, and I really appreciate hearing your side of the story and being able to tell our constituents about what you're about. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, who you are, and what's going on recently.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's a real pleasure to be here again, and I really thank you and the EDA for doing this. And it's a great opportunity for us to share with our constituents, but also our members of the Electoral District Association what we've been up to. And we're getting ready for the end of this spring session.
Yeah.
So some pretty significant issues that have come up, and Chinese interference in our elections, and threats against another MP. Certainly now we know a second carbon tax. Crime and safe communities, the opioid issues, some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Those have certainly been front of mind over the last several weeks.
So when does the sessions close for you for the summer?
We're usually done, the end of the third week of June. And then we're home for July and August.
Okay.
So these will be some long hours. We'll be sitting to midnight, and we have been for the last couple of weeks as the government tries to jam through as much bad legislation as they possibly can, and we try to hold them accountable for it. We're there working hard for our constituents because we don't want bad legislation to go through, and we don't want them to be unaccountable for it. We want to hold their feet to the fire.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to talk about a lot of the different issues, but so today we wanted to talk about the EDA, what it is. We wanted to talk about the carbon tax, which you just brought up, but also we wanted to talk a little bit about the opioid crisis that's been going on in our country, actually, but primarily actually in BC and Alberta. And so I certainly want to hear what your thoughts are, but one of the things that I'd love to talk to you about sometime in the not too distant future would be about the gun laws and the gun legislations that are really going to affect people that are part of your constituency, because most of the people out here are farmers and ranchers, and to have access to the firearms is an important deal, but our government seems to be moving in a different direction. So
it's certainly a huge issue for my constituents, but I think for Canadians across the country. And with Bill C-21, just really quickly, we had some huge wins with that legislation. The Liberals have really had to back down on some of the draconian things they were planning to do, and I sat in on a number of those committee meetings, and again sitting until midnight. But it was very clear that Liberals had no idea what they were talking about. Where the colleagues, we have members on the Conservative side that have been RCMP, military, conservation officers who are experts in these issues, and Crown prosecutors. They just dissected the Liberal amendments apart one by one, and we could talk about that in another podcast. But I think it's going to pass. The legislation will pass, but it's certainly neutered compared to what it was, thanks to the hard work of the Conservative colleagues.
Been very impressed with Rachel Dancho, I think it is.
That's right.
That's kind of leading this from the Conservatives' perspective, correct?
Yeah, Raquel is a rock star. She works super hard, and if it wasn't for the work of Raquel and our colleagues on the Public Safety Committee, we wouldn't have had the opportunities to force the Liberals to really walk a lot of this back.
Well, I think that I spent 33 years in law enforcement.
That's right.
So I'm very aware of the fact that it's the criminals that have the guns, and none of them are registered, at least most of them are not.
That's right.
And why they're going after legal registered gun owners is beyond my understanding personally.
Yeah.
We should get on to what we're here about, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we're going to talk about the Electoral District Association. Every member of Parliament has an Electoral District Association that they are accountable to. So I just learned about your Electoral District Association just over a year ago.
That's right.
And I didn't even know that these things existed.
Yeah,
so
you're not alone.
I know that. And so my wife and I have been educating ourselves quite a bit over this last year about the political system and how the political system works. So can you please tell me what an Electoral District Association is? What's its purpose? And how does it impact you personally as an MP?
Yeah, and Kevin, you're not alone. Most Canadians don't realize that the political parties have these EDAs, Electoral District Association. So mine is basically a board of directors of 30 constituents who are elected at our AGM every single year,
Right.
and they play a critical role. And not every EDA is as active as mine is, but mine is very active.
Well, you have a huge membership.
I have a huge membership, and a lot of that goes thanks to our leader and Leslie Lewis and other people who ran the last leadership. And I think my EDA has to take some credit for that too, the work that we've done to keep our members engaged. But I think our EDA really has a couple of different roles. The first role would be our EDAs help develop and amend our policy and constitution of the Conservative Party of Canada. Of Canada. So this is a very grassroots movement where our EDAs, our membership, helps develop those documents. They are a living document. When the parties merged with Peter MacKay and Stephen Harper, this wasn't written in stone. We knew at that time that this is something that's going to have to evolve as the party evolves and as Canadians evolve. So that's a big role. The other role is certainly they make up my campaign team. So when the elections come around, the idea is to have that campaign team ready to go. Whether that's signs, that's volunteers, door knocking, all of that stuff. But the other issue, or the other big role that they play is obviously fundraising. And not only here for our riding, but certainly we help ridings across the country. So I would say the roles are, policy and constitution, fundraising, campaign team, and certainly the other one, which we can't forget, is keeping our membership engaged, letting them know what's going on, not only here in the riding, but also in Ottawa. And I am accountable to them, although, I'm the elected representative. I do listen to what the advice they provide and what direction they provide, certainly when that's what we're doing in Ottawa, but even on voting on specific issues.
Does the MP get elected or selected through the EDA? And if so, how does that all happen?
Well, the EDA would orchestrate the nomination process. So the EDAs do not choose the candidates. The membership chooses the candidate.
And who is the membership?
So anyone who has a Conservative Party of Canada membership would vote for their nomination, their candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada.
So for the Foothills EDA?
Correct.
Okay, so not just of Canada, but specifically to the EDA of Foothills.
Correct. So for example, when I had my nomination, there was 4 of us. When Ted Menzies resigned, opened up a nomination for who would be the Foothills. At that time it was McLeod. We've changed names. But who would represent this region in the next federal election. 4 of us ran, and we worked pretty hard to sell memberships, and then whoever is a member on the election day, those members would elect again who is going to be the Conservative representative for Foothills in the next election. So
it's somewhat similar to how we elected Pierre Poilievre, for example.
Exactly.
This is the first time Deborah and I got involved in the process, and so we were encouraged to buy memberships.
Correct.
Right? So that was part of how the membership then decided that Pierre Poilievre would be the person that would run for us. So it's the same kind of thing in the Foothills
Exactly
district.
The same. Yeah.
So if people want to have an impact on who your MP is, you need to get involved in your Electoral District Association and the membership, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, because I don't think a lot of people even know that.
No, for sure. And thankfully I've only had to go through one nomination contest. I've had another one. No one stepped up to run against me. So
you're just too good.
Shows that hopefully that means I'm doing a good job. But yeah, certainly you're going out there and you're talking to friends and family and selling memberships, and a lot of folks just didn't realize that that's how the process went. But it's a great opportunity for us again, as the leadership was. We have more than 7,000 members in the Foothills riding alone, number 1 in the country.
Yes.
So it's a great way to engage people in the electoral process, and again with that grassroots Conservative movement, that we don't appoint leaderships or candidates. You have to go through the nomination process, which can be grueling, but I think it's a great way to prove that, to earn it, that you have the confidence and the support of your constituents and your members.
Awesome. Very good. Because I've been part of the EDA as a friend, I'm not on the board yet, but I've been able to watch some of the work that has been done by our EDA board, especially recently with regards to the policies that, because there's going to be a national conservative party convention, thank you, in Quebec. Several of our people have been deeply involved in developing policy, working on the different kinds of things that would be important to the National Conservative Association. Can you comment and talk about some of the things that you know that our EDA is actually working on?
Yeah, we have a Constitution and Policy Committee as part of our EDA, a group of very experienced and very engaged folks that certainly know their stuff, and something this is something they're very passionate about.
Indeed.
And they've been working on these proposals for more than 2 years. It's not easy to get it from the idea stage at your local EDA all the way to Quebec City at convention.
Right.
So there's a lot of work that has to be done there. We're working on some amendments on our relationship with First Nations right now, as well as environment.
Yes.
So I know those are the two main ones that we're working on. But we've had, the previous conventions, we've had a number of constitution or policy proposals that have come to the floor, and that's really unusual. But that's a testament again to the dedication and the work ethic that our group puts into it, and this is something they care deeply about.
So I learned that we can only put so many things forward as an EDA,
right?
And that oftentimes you need to get the support of other EDAs across the country. So that has required that not only those who are working on constitutional and policy issues, but we have other people that have had to make and reach out to other EDAs and have done a great job actually of developing a list of who those EDAs and how we can impact them. So I've been very surprised at the level of work that gets done and how that can affect our national impact on the Conservative Party. So that was really, really good. How does one get involved as a volunteer with an EDA? Because it is a volunteer position, correct?
Yeah, certainly. Anywhere from the president to down to folks who are just friends of the board are all volunteers. There's no paid roles, and as you've seen firsthand, the amount of hours that goes into a lot of this, especially around campaign time and after elections. But as you saw, it was fairly easy, right? Once you know about it and you reach out, we're always looking for new people, people who are bringing new ideas and new energy. We have a great group that we try and make sure that we have some representation from across the riding. So not just from High River or Okotoks or Claresholm. We want to try and have somebody from each little area. So that's worked out really well. And then because every area is a bit different. So you want all these different ideas, and in many cases, what might be an issue in Crow's Nest Pass may be quite a bit different for Elbow Valley.
Right.
So it's really important that we have all of those voices there at the table.
Well, I'm a volunteer. And here I am doing podcasts for you.
That's right,
And, I'm new to this whole process, but it was something that I feel comfortable with. I've been involved in public speaking most of my life. So I'm not afraid of this kind of stuff and the interaction. So,
well, you're putting me at ease. I was pretty nervous, but now I'm not.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the carbon tax.
Sure.
Tell me what it is and what is the purpose of the carbon tax?
Well, it's now been proven. It's a scam. This is a revenue generating mechanism for the Liberal government. This is not an environmental plan. It's a tax plan. Every single metric that we've seen now, they haven't hit a single emissions target that they've set for themselves. But the carbon tax continues to go higher, and the parliamentary budget officer kind of ripped the shroud off of it.
I saw that.
The Liberals will say every time they get a chance is, you get more money back in a carbon tax rebate than what you pay in. Well, the parliamentary budget officer was appointed by the Prime Minister, has come back and said, well, that is not the case. Canadians are worse off paying the carbon tax than they are on the rebate, about $1,500 per family. And in Alberta, it's $2,200. It's higher. So shocking that when you pay a tax, you're not better off. Wow.
Really?
I know, it's hard to believe. But now it's getting worse as the Liberals are introducing their second carbon tax, this fuel standard that they're putting out. So let's put this in perspective, Kevin, so now when the Liberals triple the carbon tax, a liter of gas is going to go up an additional 41 cents. Okay? Diesel goes up an additional 15 cents. Plus, your cost of heating your home, cost of food, all of these things go up. Now when we add this second carbon tax, this fuel standard, which comes in July 1st, that 41 cents a liter becomes 65 cents a liter.
Really? I did not know this.
That 15 cents a liter on diesel becomes 25 cents over and above what we're paying right now. So we'll be paying 61 cents a liter in 2 carbon taxes when the Liberals bring in this new, when by 2030. We'll be paying
for a system that does not work.
Does nothing. This is a revenue generator, plain and simple, for the Liberal government. That's all it is.
Which leads me to my next question then.
Yeah.
So they seem to think that this is the right way to go. Why are they so bent on using this carbon tax? Where is this drive coming from?
Well, I think that the Liberals will say this is about addressing climate change and emissions reductions, but clearly it's not doing that. And I think initially many Canadians thought, well, okay, if we pay a carbon tax, we're doing our part for the environment. But now clearly it's not doing anything. It's not successful. And eventually it gets to a point where I can't put food on the table. I can't heat my home. I can't put gas in the car to get to work. Plus it's not doing anything. So the Liberals will guise it as this climate change initiative, but this is a way for them to help cover their out of control spending. This is also a government that last fall said, you know what, we see where inflation is, 40-year high record inflation. Deficit spending only adds fuel to the inflationary fire. Well, what did they do? They came out with $43 billion in additional deficit spending in this budget. October, they say we need to have fiscal prudence here, get our spending out of control. A few months later, $43 billion in additional spending. And now, oh my gosh, a second carbon tax to help pay for that spending. That's all it is.
This reminds me of Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Sure.
When he put our country in so much debt, it took 30 years to get out of it afterwards.
Yeah.
And I see the same thing happening. Okay, so it seems to me that is the poorest in our country that are going to feel the effects of this. The wealthy will not even be touched by this likely.
Yeah, for sure. And the numbers are playing that out. Question period this past week, we're really focusing on what the additional costs of this carbon tax 2.0 is what we're calling it. But the poorest are the ones that are struggling the most already. So when you pile on these additional taxes, so for example, and we're seeing the data, we have the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto, for example. We had him as a witness at Agriculture Committee. We're talking about food inflation.
Yes.
He said the numbers that we are seeing in the food banks in the Toronto area are shocking.
Yeah.
They're up 60%.
Yeah.
Let's put that in perspective.
Yeah.
8 million Canadians are going to a food bank every single month. 8 million Canadians.
Out of our 38 million people.
Out of our 38 million people, because they can't afford to put food on the table. They are making a choice between heating their homes, paying their mortgage, or putting food on the table. And in many cases,
more than 20% of our population.
More than 20% of our population. And those are the stats that we see. Those are stats that come from the food banks and come from food rescue charities. So this isn't something that we're making up. These are what they're telling us. And there are very real consequences to these types of ideological policies that you are putting forward. And they're hurting Canadians.
So I read quite a bit. The U.S. is using technology.
Sure.
Alberta wants to use technology to fix the carbon emissions rather than having a tax. What is the Conservative Party proposing going forward?
Well, you'll hear Pierre Poilievre talk about that every opportunity he has. We are talking about technology, not taxes, to reach our climate goals. And there's no question, we live in one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, and of course we want to protect that. So we're not saying that we have to ignore the environmental issues, not at all. But we're going to actually address them with things that work, whether that's hydrogen, carbon capture and sequestration.
Yep.
But the answer to that isn't to making traditional energy more expensive. The idea is to make it cheaper to produce renewables and green energy. Also, let's start giving credit where credit is due.
Yes.
In many cases, agriculture is a carbon sink. We're carbon positive when it comes to those types of things.
And forestry?
But we make the policy that Liberals put out, make it exactly the opposite.
Yes.
So we need to get a better understanding where we are in terms of carbon sequestration, forestry, agriculture, all of those things, but start focusing on nuclear, hydro dams. We can't be blocking these things at the same time making it more expensive on traditional fuels, because there is no replacement right now. I can grab my phone, I have an app, anybody can use it, Grid Watch. It tells me to the second where our energy comes from. On a good day, when it's sunny and beautiful like today, between 12 and 15% of our energy comes from renewables, solar, and wind, right? That means 85 comes from traditional natural gas, nuclear. So if we got rid of natural gas and nuclear today,
we're hooped.
There's nothing to replace it. So,
which is why Pat Moe, it is Pat Moe, right? Or Scott Moe.
Scott Moe,
sorry.
Yeah, Premier of Saskatchewan.
Premier of Saskatchewan is fighting so hard against their demand that by 2035 we're away from natural gas and coal.
Right.
Which is impossible.
We have to, Kevin, that's a perfect way of saying it. We have to start looking at these things realistically.
Yeah.
This idea of us having 50% electric vehicles by 2035 and 100% by 2050, these things will not happen. It's financially and logistically impossible. So we have to stop this virtue signaling and just saying we're going to do these things because it sounds good, and bankrupting Canadians at the same time, and say, you know what, there are logical steps that we can take to get to where we want to be.
Right.
But we have to do them in a measured, realistic process where the technology comes, but not at the detriment of your average Canadian, hardworking Canadian families who are just trying to make ends meet.
So this is slightly off topic, but we know that electric vehicles are becoming the thing. Mm-hmm. GM and Ford and all these other big companies are moving to it, and Volkswagen just got a $13 billion contract to establish these batteries. My concern is we're concerned about pollution.
Right.
But yet we're okay with the mining of lithium and the things that will scar the earth, just like other mining does, including coal mining and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there's no conversation about that. Thoughts?
I think that's changing. First off, I think Canada has to play a leading role in some of those critical minerals that we do have, like lithium. On the Volkswagen deal, I think as we have a chance to review that deal, line by line, I think Canadians are going to be disgusted with our return on investment on that, in terms of we're going to be at $1.5 million per job per year. Is that a good investment for Canadians? $13 billion.
$13 billion?
Probably not. When you have companies like Toyota who are getting away from manufacturing electric vehicles because they realize this is not realistic.
They're going to the hybrids.
They're going to the hybrids, or they're going to looking at hydrogen cells.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, those things will be there. But unless we invested realistically tens of billions of dollars to build our electrical grid, for example, during the heat wave in Alberta a couple of years ago, I remember the city of Calgary telling Calgarians not to charge their electric vehicles because we didn't have the power grid. That's with 5% of Calgarians owning an electric vehicle. 5%. How are you going to manage 50, let alone 100, let alone 10%? So again, that's where it comes down to being realistic, where I think Canada can play a critical role in these minerals for those who want them and those who can afford them, and for those areas where it works. Electric vehicles may be great in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. They're not going to be so great in Claresholm, Nanton.
We know where you're traveling great distances.
Right. And in cold weather and all these types of things, there's going to be options for people, and they can choose those different options, but we can't force this on everybody when it's not realistic and it's not affordable.
Right. I personally work at a addictions recovery center for men. But I'm very aware of the deep problems we're having in Canada, especially, even today. The reason I was a little bit late getting here was I was having to do a drug test on a guy who struggled with methamphetamines and opioids. It was big trouble. Many of the guys that I work with literally were on death's door because of the drug use. Tell me what I know that in Canada, I just finished reading a study yesterday, It's a big problem across Canada, but it's particularly a problem in Alberta and British Columbia. Tell me what your perspective is on this opioid problem.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and certainly thank you for all the work that you've done in this area, and certainly I know the stories that you've shared are incredible, and there's no question this is more acute in Alberta and BC, but it is certainly making its way across Canada. I don't think there's a part of anywhere in this country that's not affected by this. But I think what we're starting to see now is we're destroying the myth of safe supply, where this has been sort of the thing that everybody's leaned on, that this is the solution. And as my colleague Melissa Lanceman, we had a Zoom meeting with a couple dozen young people from across Canada last night talking about this issue, and she says, it's time that we started talking about out loud what most Canadians are thinking and just don't say it yet. That safe supply and a subsidized free drugs on our streets is making the matters worse. And again, the data shows that, where in BC, the opioid overdose deaths are up 300%. 300% since 2016. We have a Liberal government that's now put in another $100 million into a safe supply. You have vending machines. But there were some great articles in the last few weeks. Adam Zito in the National Post, basically showing what is happening is those suffering with addiction are going to their safe supply place, getting 2 dozen hydromorphone pills that are now selling on the streets for $1. They've gone down 95% in value, but they are going to the schoolyard, the playgrounds,
that's exactly where
and
they
other
go.
community areas, selling those pills, and then taking the revenue of those drugs and buying fentanyl. So here's what's happening. You are now getting our next generation of addicts hooked, and you're still going to the toxic drug supply. So
I spent 8 years of my 25 as a sworn member in high schools.
Sure.
Watching the drug supply coming into the schools. It hadn't gotten this bad back then, but it is an open market. For kids who are accessing, as I was saying, like, we've got guys coming into our center who have been hooked on legalized methadone.
Right.
And they're dying because of that. And you're right, they go to fentanyl or carfentanil, which is 100 times supposed to be more potent than fentanyl itself, and dying on the streets because of that. It seems we're a culture that if we say no, we're out of sync with culture. Or that if I say no to you, I hate you. Right?
Yeah, it seems like there's this thing around, we don't want to stigmatize those who are suffering with addiction, and that's not what we're doing.
No,
we're trying to get them to get off of that.
Yes.
But all this is doing is perpetuating that addiction, and now they're diverting their drugs to, a subsidized, government-funded drug supply is flooding our streets. That's it, plain and simple. And we're not offering that wraparound service, that treatment, recovery, mental health therapy. Those things aren't there as part of safe supply. They like to say it is, but it's not. And it's an easy solution. And I can tell you, we started talking about this over the last couple of weeks in the House of Commons. The Liberals and the NDP get up and start yelling at us that, how can we do this? And but there's a stark contrast that we're seeing. And I'd love your opinion on this because you've seen it firsthand. But you have the Liberals and the NDP in BC who are now pushing safe supply to unprecedented numbers, but also decriminalizing hard drugs like cocaine, like heroin. And we're seeing the numbers. Last month alone, more than 250 people died of drug overdoses in BC alone.
There's 268 recently.
Something like that. Okay, so
in Alberta, I think it was.
So in Alberta, you have the Conservative government here got rid of the supervised injection sites, put in investments into 10,000 new treatment beds, treating 29,000 Albertans. Our overdose deaths are down more than 40%. A very stark contrast between what happened in Alberta, what's happening in BC. So I really worry that a NDP provincial government here will go right back to where BC is, and they'll follow that same method where they're pushing safe supply, they're pushing those subsidized drugs, and getting away from the focus of our resources on treatment and recovery, which is working in Alberta.
What's codependency? Codependency is being a rescuer
Yeah.
from and not allowing people to suffer the consequences of their own actions.
Right.
I see
That's a good way of putting it.
I see this as institutionalized codependency.
Yeah.
That we are not willing, no parent who actually loves their kid says yes to everything their kid does.
For sure.
We say no, and we say a hard no.
Yeah.
That there are going to be consequences to you if you continue down this road. One of the things that, having been working in an addiction center, is that we try to allow our students to suffer the consequences for their own personal actions.
Yeah.
For them to see the consequences that they have on, first and foremost, themselves, but always the impact that they have on their families,
right,
and those that love them the most. And they're the ones that get hurt the most.
Yeah.
So by offering safe supply, you are continuing people in that ongoing hurt of themselves and those who are closest to them.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have some pretty strong opinions about that, and so I'm very, very happy. Our director, our center, went to a provincial presentation about the increase in funding that's going to building centers. I get concerned about the number of government-funded centers because this is a personal opinion. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing my personal opinions, but I see that private institutions can do a far better job,
sure,
with government money than the government-funded or government-organized facilities. And I would like to see there be more hope given to the private sector. That's my opinion. What solution is the Conservative Party offering then? Alberta is moving towards the treatment centers rather than safe supply. And what are your thoughts in terms of where should the Conservative Party be taking this?
Well, your timing is perfect, Kevin. We had an opposition day motion in the House of Commons on this last week, and our ask is simple. The Liberals spent $78 million on safe supply previous year. They've now jumped that up to $100 million this year. We're saying take that $100 million and reinvest, take that away from safe supply, and reinvest that in treatment recovery centers and mental health and addiction counseling. We'll see how the Liberals vote, but I can tell you from the debates in the House, of which I participated in, the NDP and the Liberals will be voting against that. They want
the opposition's motion.
Yeah, they want to perpetuate the safe supply. We want to focus on the treatment, recovery, and mental health. Have those wrapped around. Harm reduction may be part of that, but that can't be the priority. And I firmly believe Canadians are on our side with this. They want their kids back. They want their communities back, and we want our justice system back. We can't just be turning a blind eye to the use of not only diverting these safe supply drugs, but having fentanyl, heroin, cocaine decriminalized and used on our streets and used on our playgrounds and used in our parks. And that's what's happening across BC, and we're certainly seeing it here in Alberta as well.
Well, thank you.
Pleasure.
For this time. I appreciate it. On that last point, what can your Electoral District Association membership do to support the Conservative Party movement away from this safe drug supply?
That's a great question, and there's no doubt in my mind, certainly seeing how the Liberals and NDP have reacted to this so far, is we are going to be fighting an uphill battle in terms of they are going to make us look like we're going backwards. We're going to be stigmatizing those suffering with addiction. We need our members to step up with us and push back and say enough is enough. This isn't working. This experiment, this failed experiment of safe supply, this is not what Canadians want. And our memberships have to, on their social media, if they're ever asked by the media, this is where we need a united voice saying we want the priorities need to change.
So if you are a member of the Foothills constituency, I strongly urge you to send a note to John in support, send a note to those in Parliament expressing your views. Yeah. John, once again, thank you very much for the time that you've given us to do this. Really appreciate it. I continue to learn things as I listen to you, and I am encouraged because I know that there are some good people in Parliament that are fighting for our cause and for the cause of right, I think, and for the truth. So thank you very much for your time, and may God bless you in what you do.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it, and I thank you very much for doing this. It's a great way for us to get the message out to our membership and certainly our constituents as well, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you.